Okay, Coach Carroll here again. We're going to finish up this lab quickly now. So, just to review, we've actually we've looked at these different drawings that we had, and we said, well, which of these sub-assemblies do I want to, or which of these assemblies do I want to create first? And we reasoned that we wanted to start with the lowest assembly that was only made from parts, that had no sub-assemblies within inside it. Okay, so we made this one first, and we've also created this sub-assembly as well. Okay, now we have everything that we need to actually make this piston press assembly. Again, this is a bottom-up methodology where you make all the parts or all the sub-assemblies, and then you finally put all those together. Okay, so go to File, New, and we're going to make a new assembly. Okay, this will be the main final assembly. So I want a standard millimeter assembly. Create that. And let's save it. Okay, first thing we'll do, I'll just call this one the main piston press assembly. And hit save there. Okay. So, this is what we're going to. Okay, so what's the first part that you would want to place? Again, you would want your first part to normally be something that's kind of a base or a grounded part, something that will be grounded or fixed, and that's obviously this part here. You have a nice frame that everything else is mounted to. Okay, that's called the cylinder base here. So let's let that be the first part. Okay, so go to Place and go find the cylinder base and hit Open. And I'll zoom out again. Right click, hit Grounded at Origin. That's always a good idea to do for the first part, so that the origin of the assembly matches the origin of the main part. Okay. All right, so we've got that. Now let's start adding in some other things. Okay. So what else? What would be the next part, you think? Well, we have several options here, really. I could add this handle in right here, number 3. The hinge is what it's called. I could also add this other sub-assembly. Let's actually do that. Let's add this cylinder body sub-assembly. Okay. So let's go find it. Let's go to Place. And go to this sub-assembly that you've created now, the cylinder body sub-assembly. All right, hit OK. There it is. Click once and hit Escape. We've got it in here. Okay. So you see these holes here. That hole, and there should be one on the flip side. Yeah, this hole here. Those will align with these holes right here. Okay. Alright, so constrain. Let's go to constrain. Let's make sure that axis fits with this axis. Hit OK. There it is. Okay. Alright. Now, again, let's refresh on the degrees of freedom. Let's go back here to View. Go to View, select degrees of freedom, and you can see there's 2 degrees of freedom. You see these. There's one green arrow and one green rotation vector there. So that means I can rotate it and I can slide it in and out. Those are the 2 degrees of freedom. Okay. Well, how about restricting this so it can't move left or right? How far would I, or where do I want to restrict it? Well, I want it to be right in the middle. Okay. Again, you remember how we do that? Well, that's with planes now. Again, I don't want to do it with a face. I want to find a mid-plane. This mid-plane should already be turned on for you. So I want to constrain this mid-plane right here with a mid-plane on this sub-assembly. All right. So let's find a mid-plane on this sub-assembly. So expand that. And I'm going to look at one of these front covers, either the front cover or the back cover here. Let's look at this front cover. All right, expand under the origin. Whoops, yeah, you see that plane right there? It's not this one, not this one. Select the YZ plane. Okay, so I want to constrain, I'll just turn it visible. I want that plane to match up with the middle plane of the cylinder base that I've put in. All right, so go back to constrain. Now notice one thing, before I add this constraint, you see this green arrow right here for the degrees of freedom. That says it's free to move left to right like this. After this constraint, that green arrow will go away, and it will only be able to rotate. So I want to constrain this plane, select that plane with this plane. Hit OK. Now notice what happened to the degrees of freedom. It's a red arrow, or sorry, a red rotation vector there. See our red rotation vector. The green translation vector went away. Okay. So the only thing I can do now is rotate this. Okay. Now, before you move any further, I want to show another thing here. Notice if I try to click on the piston rod and actually move it, and you can't do it. All right, but you do want it to move. I want this piston rod to move in and out. Okay. And by default, when you place a subassembly within an assembly, it locks that subassembly. Okay, and we don't want that. So if I right-click on the subassembly for the cylinder body, if I right-click on that, come down here to flexible. When I click on flexible, you see these little icons that pop up on it now. Okay. So this actually allows now the piston rod to be able to drag in and out, just like I've already previously constrained it when I actually made that subassembly. Okay, so again, I'd make that flexible. Okay. Now, what do I want to put in next? Let's go look at our pictures here. Okay, how about this main handle here? It's number 3. It's called the hinge, TU008. Let's go place that in. Okay, so go to place, and let's go find that. What's it called? It's called a hinge. Sorry, not seeing the name for it here. Where'd it go? There it is. Sorry, it's called the clamp in this one. Sorry about that. Clamp. Okay. There it is. Click on clamp. Open that. Click once and escape. Notice the degrees of freedom. I'm able to move it any way that I want. Again, I will click on the rotate. And let's rotate this to approximately the position that I'll place it. Okay. Now I'm going to add a constraint, and let's make this fit in here. Click OK. Notice most of the degrees of freedom went away except for 2. Now I can slide it and rotate it like this. Okay. Alright, again. Now what's another logical constraint? Okay. Well, I could say, hey, let's make this thing be in the very middle, okay, which is true, but if I constrain it to fit with this, I may not have to do that. Let's look at that. Let's add a next constraint. And let's say I want that axis to be centered with this axis now. Hit OK. Alright, so now those are constrained. I can still slide it left or right though. Okay, so again, how do we fix this? Well, let's go find a middle plane of this handle. It's called the clamp here. So expand the clamp. Let's look under the origin. Not that one, not that one. There's one. Let's make that visible. Notice it goes right through the middle there. Okay. And I can click on constrain, click on this plane, and then the center plane for the base here. Click on that. Okay. Well, look what happened. Okay. It actually flipped it around the wrong direction. Okay. Why did it do that? Well, let's go back to this mate. So this is the last constraint that I just added. Okay. I'm going to right click and edit that. Okay. Now, you see under solution here, there's in this picture the two red arrows, which are normal vectors to the faces or the planes. They're opposing each other. They're opposite. In this one, they're the same direction. So depending on clicking this, it will flip. It will flip the two planes. So if I click on that one, now let's rotate it back up here. There we go. Sorry, trying to get the rotation going. Rotate it up. Having a hard time. There it is. Sorry, I was having a hard time rotating it. Okay, now when I flip the orientation, it actually flipped it in the correct location now. Let's see that again. Again, I can right click on this constraint. So this is the last constraint that I added between those, you see those two planes there. Okay, right click, hit edit that. So if the solution is this one, I click OK, it flips it around. Okay, that's not what I want to do. Let's edit that. Let's just flip it back to the flush. Okay. There we go. Okay. All right. Now, so you can see we've already got the motion constraint here, and notice I can't move it further than this or further this way because of the limit that I applied when I made the limit for this cylinder on the cylinder body subassembly here. Okay, that's very nice. Now, let's say if I only wanted the stroke to go between here or here. And this may be important for you to know how to do on a quiz, to know how to limit an angle constraint. Okay, so if I want to add say if I wanted to add limits to say, let's make this handle only go from this position to, let's say, this position here. So let's say one that's vertical to, let's say, 30 degrees from vertical. So I only want the handle to limit to this type of motion here. Okay, I don't want it to go here or here, just in a small limit. Okay, so that's adding a limit to an angle constraint. All right, I'm going to turn this plane off, turn the visibility off. All right, so that would be adding a constraint. Now, what type of a constraint? Every constraint that we've added now has been a normal mate constraint here. You can see these different types, all right? This time I'm going to actually add an angle constraint here. So select on angle, and by default it selects this third one here, okay? It's an explicit reference vector. So the first one, I'm going to say I want this face here to be, I'm going to define an angle between that face and, let's say, this flat face here. Okay, now the reference vector, which is this black one, that one should be perpendicular to both of those. Okay, so that needs to be going this way on this, but no, sorry, that face is angled. How about this face? Okay, so that face right there, the one that's now turned purple, the normal vector to that face is perpendicular to both this vector and this vector here as well. Okay? So I could add some degree here. If I made it 0, what if I made it 15? Is it going to give me a preview? I hope it would. Let's say if I make it 15, what does it do? Okay, now I'm going to edit that. Let's make it about 0 degrees. Yeah, it makes that vertical now. What if I make it, I can go back the other way, let's say make it -30, and it just goes this way, -30 degrees. I can make it, so again, I could continue this process, maybe -45, maybe make it 20, it goes back the other way. So I'm adding these angle constraints, okay? But with this, I actually want to add limits to that. So let's right click on that and click on edit. Okay, again, I want to use limits. The maximum, let's make it, oops, sorry, the minimum here, make that -30, and the maximum, let's make it 0. Okay, and now I hit OK. You can see I've added, now if you click and you try to drag this, I can't move it any further than 0 degrees, and I can't move it any further in this way than -30 degrees. Okay, so I've applied limits to this angle constraint here. Okay, notice now this limit on the angle constraint prevents this piston from actually contacting, or it prevents the piston from going to its maximum or minimum position. All right. So that may be important for you to know how to do on a quiz there. Okay, I'm actually going to delete that angle constraint now. Okay, so now the constraint is again limited by the motion of the piston where it contacts here and here. All right, so what else do we need to do? Let's go look here. Yeah, the last thing we need to do is, we've got the subassembly, we've got the main base, I've got this clamp or that handle, let's say. The last thing is just to add these pins, which would actually hold everything together in reality. Okay, so that's not too bad to do. I'll just go through that very quickly now. All right. Let's first add, this maybe be the most complex one, these short pins here. Number 7, that's a lock pin. Okay, so let's go get one of those. Let's go to place. Let's go find a lock pin. There's a lock pin. Hit OK. Place one. Or actually place, I'll just do one of them right now. Again, I'm going to turn off the degrees of freedom just so it's not looking at so much. Now I want this pin. Let's zoom in and look at this pin here. You can see there's a flat piece right here on this pin. Okay, what's that for? Well, the purpose of that is so I can go put a screw through this hole that will screw down on that flat piece there and keep that from sliding out. Keep that pin from sliding out of this hole. Okay, so let's look back at our picture. Look at part number 8 here. The 6mm SHCS. That's actually a little lock screw is what that's called. Okay, so let's go find that. So go to Assemble, hit Place. Here's the 6mm SHCS. Hit OK. Place that. All right, now let's look at this part that I placed. One end is flat. The other end, rotate around, has a little hexagon hole in it right there. Okay, so that's where you would put the little Allen key or the little wrench to actually screw it in. Again, I'll click on Free Rotate and rotate this where it's in its approximate position, and click on Constrain, and let's say make this axis centered with that axis and hit OK. So now this will screw in here. If I slide it down, you can see it comes into that hole. So the ends of this screw right there would fit flat up against this and would lock that in place. Okay, so again, let's click on Free Rotate. Let's rotate this component to where it's approximately in the right position. There you go. Now let's constrain, and let's say this axis with this one. Hit OK. Alright, so this slides in and out like this. Okay. Now the question is, how far? Alright. Alright. Well, to make this easier to see, when I slide this inside, it's hard to see what's going on inside because I just look at this cylinder base. Okay? And so I kind of want that cylinder base to go away. So let's right click on the cylinder base. If I uncheck the enabled, okay, it'll just make it transparent so that then you can really see what's going on inside. Okay? Notice if we look at this pin here, this pin has a plane. See this plane right here that actually goes through the very middle of the flat surface of it. Okay? So I want to use that pin, or sorry, I want to use this plane right here to constrain to a middle plane on this screw. Alright, or on that 6mm screw. So now let's go to constrain, and I'll constrain this plane with a plane on that screw. I actually could do that axis like that as well. Let's just do that. Let's click on that axis. Now hit OK. You see what it did there? Okay, it made the axis of that screw always on this plane. So now I can't slide this lock pin left or right anymore. I can only rotate it. Okay. Now I can still pull this up or down, but where should this be locked? All right. Well, this face should match with that face. And when I do that, that will actually prevent the rotation of this lock pin here. All right. So again, I'm only adding as many constraints are as necessary, and they're logical constraints. Okay, very logical. So let's go to constrain. Let's constrain this face with this face there, and hit OK. There it is. Now you can see, now if I try to click and rotate this pin, I can't do it, okay, because the screw is fixed to be inside the hole in that, in the cylinder base there. Okay. Notice the cylinder base in the part browser here is actually green because I've turned off enabled so I can see through it there. Okay, so very nice to do. Again, the enabled or making something disabled allows you to see through it and make selections that are easy. Okay. Go to this mate here. I want to just show you one thing about a mate to make it very clear. We've discussed it in the last video, but let's just make it clear. So this is the last mate where these two faces, the bottom face of the screw and the face of that pin, the flat face on the pin, were met together. Right click and hit edit on that. If I change the solution type, so let's change it to flush here, click OK, you see what it does is it flips that pin around. Okay, so click on that flush, hit edit, change the solution type this way, and you can see it flips it around. So that's just showing you what that solution type does there. Okay, so let's change it back to the correct one. Now, you could also click on that and select an offset. So let's say you want an offset of, I don't know, 5 millimeters. Click OK. Well, it actually offsets those two planes 5 millimeters from each other. Okay, but I just click on it once. We want those to be actually stuck together there. All right. Now I'm going to do the exact same thing on the other side over here. Okay. So let's do that very quickly again. All right. I won't discuss this one since we just discussed it here. So I'll just do the same thing. All right, so we've got that. Now let's go put these pins in here. Okay, so let's first go find the name of the pins. Look at number 5, and number 5 is a short pin is what it's called there. Okay, let's come over here, place, go find your short pin. Long pin, maybe it's called a short shaft there. That looks about right. Yep, very good, the short shaft. So I want the center of that shaft to be in the center of this hole. Hit OK. Now notice this shaft has these this groove in it right here. Okay, so what's going to go in that groove is a little spring, little lock washer, let's say. Okay, to prevent it from sliding here, sliding like that. Okay. Now again, I've constrained it to be along this axis, but I want the middle plane, I want this to always be in the very middle. Alright, so it's the same distance on either side. So again, we'll do that as we've done previously by constraining mid-planes of parts. So constrain that mid-plane with this one, hit OK. Alright. I can do the same thing with the long shaft. Let's look here, part number 4. Part number 4 is the long pin there. So let's come here, let's place, but not the lock pin, the long shaft there. Now hit open. Alright, again, let's constrain the center to be on this center. Okay, slide it out so I can see this middle plane. Let's constrain that middle plane with the middle plane of the base. Hit OK. And we're very near the end, guys. Almost done there. Now we just need to put the little lock washers into the slots there. What are they called? Number 6. The snap ring. Sorry, I called them the wrong thing. They're called a snap ring there. The metric snap ring. Okay. So let's go find the snap ring. Click on place. Somewhere around here. Got it. Not there. There's the snap ring. Sorry, the ANSI B27.7 there. That's the snap ring. All right. Hit OK. Let's place one of them. We'll just constrain one at first. Click on constrain. Move that box out of the way. Again, I want this center axis. This time the axis is really small. That's all right. Click on that. Let's say I want to place it on this center axis. Hit OK. So now I can still slide it in and out like this. Alright, now let's constrain, and let's say I want this snap ring, that face to meet up with this face. There it is, hit OK. And now notice I can still rotate it, but now that snap ring would prevent the pin from sliding in or out right there. Alright, from sliding too far to the right. And I'd have to go do the same thing for these other 3 slots. This slot, and this last slot here as well. So finish that up on your own. I'll let you do that. And when you've done that, now you've actually finished that lab. Alright.